Warren Paul Anderson, VP of Product, Discreet Labs, building Findora, public blockchain with programmable privacy. Happy to be at REIMAGINE.
Hello and welcome to REIMAGINE 2021. This is our one-year anniversary and 10th edition of our conference. We host these events as part of our monthly series, bringing you nothing but the best projects, bright minds, and leaders in the space. We've been fortunate enough to invite many talented individuals and teams to come speak with us, providing updates, insights, and all the above. That's happening in crypto. I'll be your host today, Adam, from the Mouseball team, where we focus on early stage investments through our accelerator, or providing development support to a growing number of projects, as well as education within the Mouseball University program. Our main objective and goals are pretty simple. It's increasing adoption, use cases, and real-world applications. This spans into REIMAGINE and why we do this conference while everybody is trying to understand, learn what crypto and blockchain are. We're here to kind of tell the story. So I'm super excited. I want to go ahead and stop talking here on the intro. I have Warren Paul Anderson, VP of Product at Discreet Labs. Super excited to have him back. He supported us a few times over this one-year anniversary over the last 12 months. Warren, how you doing, man? Welcome back.
Doing well. It's good to be back. It's been a long year.
Man, how did it treat you, man? It looks like you were in the city. You scattered to the burbs. How did you survive the pandemic?
We did okay. Just hunkered down with the family and just keep grinding on work. The travel definitely ceased to exist for a while, which is crazy in
That's
crypto
right.
because it's such a global industry. So most of my meetings have taken place over the last year just through like this on virtual settings. So the flight miles have decreased, but the enthusiasm's still high.
And the work's still increased.
That's right.
Right?
The work never stops. That's why I
Yeah,
say
man.
crypto never sleeps, right?
Exactly. So like on the work front, yeah, what was it? Did it kind of pick up, stabilize? You guys hit any hurdles or just kind of smooth sailing? Because you're right, like we've been remote and distributed since Mousebelt's inception, really. So it didn't really affect us. We already had all the the our operations aligned and kind of we've already operating that way. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean the shift to virtual was, I think, kind of a transition for everybody. I think it was probably easier for people in crypto, just because I think distributed teams is kind of the standard in the industry. So, for instance, like for me, it wasn't too bad. Actually, I shifted roles, left Ripple after 4.5 years and joined Discreet Labs in March of this year. So for me, it was literally just like closing up one laptop, shipping it off, receiving another laptop, opening it, and that was the transition. So without being in office, you don't have any of those like crazy transitions. So it's been cool to continue working in crypto. I've been at it for 8 years full time since 2013. So it's just amazing. I mean, the crypto market or the industry in general just takes hits, but keeps on ticking.
No, I hear you. And like regarding Reimagine, it's not a. Fortunately, we kind of made a positive out of everybody being stuck at home, right? We don't want everybody getting sick during this virus, but it allowed us to really highlight the projects, industry leaders, individuals like yourself, and it's been great, and we're going to continue on until really like the viewers, the data, the stats reflect otherwise. But it's been great to do this every month. I don't think anybody else has done this every month, 40 to 60 speakers. But we enjoy it, and hopefully everybody else does. And I thank you really for participating, more than a few times here. So welcome back with Discreet Labs. We'll kind of get into this discussion now. So we have a new audience, and would love to kind of get your Bitcoin story a little bit. I know you used to mine back in the day. You said you've been in this since 2013, and we'll kind of get your rabbit hole story a little bit before we get into Findora and what you've been doing.
Yeah, sure. So I say I've been working full time since 2013 in crypto, but actually started mining Bitcoin back in 2011. So I
Yep.
caught the tail end of the CPU kind of phase where you could actually still mine Bitcoin on a laptop
Yeah. Wow.
and actually, be fairly successful that way. So, and then that transitioned to GPU mining, on more of a classic server. And, I was just doing it part time. I had a startup and I was running, and the client that I was running on, the QT client, wasn't super stable. So every now and then it just like shut off, and I just kind of let it go. I mean, looking back, I wish I'd been running that miner like full time and really reinvest and double down. But
For
it
sure.
wasn't really until 2013 when I was like, this technology's been around 4 years now. It hasn't gone away. It's grown. It's starting to attract like real entrepreneurs. Brian Armstrong was kind of really pushing hard on Coinbase at that time. And so it was starting to attract like real VCs and like legit people. So that's when I was like, I'm going to dive into this full time and stake my career on the technology. And that's basically what happened.
Now you talk about the technology. Does that also include Bitcoin? Like I know that blockchain's been around in terms of the concepts, distributed systems, cryptography, nodes and stuff that how these things operate. Does that also include Bitcoin? Like, did you separate the two? It's hard to separate the two, but Bitcoin is really the killer, the use case, for specific. Well, for blockchain at the moment, and obviously everybody else is working on a variety of things, and it's expanded over the last over 10 years. But yeah, what was it about? Was it the technology and also Bitcoin, like
Yeah,
as a
definitely.
currency, a
For
currency,
sure.
or
Yeah.
alternative?
Early days. So like in 2013, where I was kind of working on some projects, and ended up starting a company called Hedgie, which was backed by Tim Draper, Mark Benioff, and some other angels. And we were actually building on Bitcoin, and using Bitcoin script to do like very rudimentary smart contracts using Bitcoin opcodes. So we're using a combination of the opcodes and multisig to do a very, very simple like smart contract to support actual OTC derivatives. So the platform kind of helped actual Bitcoin miners forward sell their Bitcoin to lock in a price so that they didn't have to worry about the price volatility because they have bills to pay and everything.
For sure.
And then we would line up institutional investors on the other side, which obviously KYC and everything, and we're able to kind of create a little market there. And it actually turned out to be one of the first OTC wholesale markets, of its kind in Bitcoin. Now the OTC world's kind of exploding, which we anticipated would happen, but Bitcoin is kind of weird. It's like it started off retail first on exchange, where most financial markets start off like OTC or over the counter first through institutional, bilateral trades. So Bitcoin's or crypto's always been a little weird. So that was just like one weird wrinkle. But yeah, it's always been about Bitcoin. I see a lot of trends on like enterprise blockchain. People say blockchain without the crypto, and I understand that they have to kind of separate the two to kind of fully grasp it. But the real innovation is actually in on the coupled together. Because Bitcoin is an incentive mechanism to secure the network. So that's very important. Without Bitcoin, the Bitcoin network wouldn't be secure.
For sure, for sure. We'll get into that enterprise stuff down the road with Findora. Um, from a product standpoint, you've been at Ripple you've been doing product for a long time. What were some of the cool things that you liked, creating products over at your previous employer, that kind of, kept you along your journey? Now you're at Findora, which we'll get into, but what were you like proud of developing a lot of the products? I've talked to you now for a few years. We met at the Stanford, conference a few years back, and you've, ever since then, ever since we've chatted, you've just had your hands in a lot of, the services, the solutions, the back end stuff, trying to work with developers in a variety of ways. And I'm assuming you're obviously carrying that over, but your time there, that was a big company, and you guys were, moving rather rapidly and really trying to figure it out. What were some of your, proud moments or that you were happy about?
Yeah, sure. So, we kind of wrapped up Hedgie. We ran into some regulatory. We needed some regulatory clarity to move forward. We couldn't. So we ended up actually selling the platform to Wire, which was run by Michael Dunworth and Yanni on that team. And I joined Ripple, which at the time, a guy working on Bitcoin joining Ripple was a little shocking for some people.
Yeah.
But to me, Ripple was like kind of a diamond in the rough. There was a lot of really interesting technology that I think just hadn't really been polished enough to like meet a developer kind of ecosystem. So I kind of took a tour of duty approach to joining Ripple. It was obviously a kind of a well organized, kind of well oiled company, and so I kind of took my founder hat off and decided to just become a product manager and work on cool technology. So I started off working on XRP Ledger. At the time it was a lot less decentralized when I joined. And I really had kind of an ambition to further decentralize the network. And so was able to achieve some of that, working with an awesome growing community of both node operators and developers. And then, from there, we introduced some interesting features that we, pushed into the market just with the growing kind of community around the decentralized topology. From there, I was able to kind of figure out a way to with working with the rest of the team, a way to do some interesting cross-border transactions utilizing the actual digital currency in the middle. So doing like a classic fiat to crypto transaction, crypto send it to another exchange, crypto to fiat, and that whole kind of hops happen in a matter of seconds. So basically compressing a cross-border transaction, which would usually take days, into a few seconds, which is a pretty big achievement. And then, I'd worked on work with Stephen Thomas and the team there on Interledger, which was one of the first interoperability protocols that focused on interoperating blockchain networks and also payment networks. So it was it's tokenless, and it really kind of uses that same like TCP/IP stack where it sits on really the layer 3 on top of these layer 1s and layer 2s. So I was able to work on that for about a year or so, and that was really cool. And then was able to launch the developer platform for Ripple, the open developer platform. And then finally, we worked on a project called PayString, which formerly called PayID, which worked on actually the addressing layer. So there was a full stack, and this is all open source technology. So completely open stack. And this basically allowed people to, instead of copy pasting, annoying Bitcoin address or Ethereum address, you could just use, an email or an address that looks similar to an email. So it's username, dollar, whatever domain you had. And then you could take your crypto addresses and roll them up into this one single address. And then there was a bunch of routing mechanisms that were used to kind of route the currency. So very cool stuff, probably way ahead of its time. And, I think I started to see more and more projects use that stuff. So Ripple was always very ahead of the curve in a lot of ways, and kind of was contrarian in a lot of ways too. So, but definitely proud of the work, did there. Awesome team. And I'm still, rooting for them, and as both a shareholder and a bag holder. So,
we have like students watching this, right? We have people that are looking to switch careers or advance themselves. Did you learn anything about yourself that you didn't know? How much of what we could spend just a minute or two and we can move on, but I think it's important. Like, you were a founder, you took that hat off, you jumped into like a big, organization, and then you started taking on projects. There might be people that are similar background, right? Like founder type, technical type, non-technical type. Did you surprise yourself in any way? One, and then two, did you kind of just learn on the flow? Do you think not anybody can do it, but with a similar background or at least the pieces can take on projects like you're doing now? Meaning you don't need a PhD specifically, or you don't need to be a cryptographer, stuff like that to put these products together.
Yeah, definitely. And I think what kind of surprised me initially is like I had never been an actual like I had been a founder and like more of like a head of product, but being an actual product manager in an organization, kind of working more cross-functionally on the team stuff, and had to kind of learn quickly. As a founder, you kind of you wear multiple hats. You're making sure that everything from like the operational challenges are being achieved, and then also like the product and customer challenges are being met. So it kind of gave me a chance to really focus and dig deeper on the actual product and working with customers and users. So was able to kind of learn more about like the actual core functional skills of being a product manager, running sprints, managing a backlog, doing kind of customer interviews, and kind of really getting the customer experience down. And there's just a lot of like tools that you can add to your kind of your mouse belt, if you will, and be able to be more effective, as an operator. And it's helped me because as a founder, I was able to kind of take leadership on a lot of projects that was kind of came naturally. But then as an operator, with it being in product management, I was able to kind of hone my skill set and become like more effective. And I had some technical background, but I don't think it's necessary. People ask me all the time, how do I become a product manager? And I often say, like, there are so many roads that can lead to product management. You can come from a classic engineering background. You can come from a design background. You can come from a business development background. You can come from a financial background. And so it doesn't matter where you come from. It's just learning the product kind of management skills that are, there's different product schools online and stuff that you kind of learn and practice on your own. And even just like tinkering on projects, and kind of wearing the hat of a product manager. Definitely learning and reading more about products, I think is really, really
Yeah.
helpful. So you don't necessarily have to have a degree or actual like background experience. So I always remind students to make sure that they want it bad enough, they can kind of find their own path.
Awesome. No, thanks for highlighting that, because I think a lot of people, overestimate or just kind of think maybe they're not qualified. But what I've noticed, like individuals like yourself, you just kind of research and you get it done, you figure it out, you leverage what to get better, and then not only that, like get outside your comfort zone and really understand the landscape to put a product, well, specifically for product, understand the whole roadmap and from A to Z, and like who's involved, how does this impact and all that, and put the puzzle together in the end for the end user and whoever is gonna use that. So thank you for highlighting that. Cool. So here we go. March, a few months ago, you come to Findora. What is or Discreet Labs, which is building Findora? What is it that attracted you there, and how did you end up at your new gig?
Yeah, sure. So I actually heard about the Findora project, actually a couple of years ago. I think it was Benedict Boons. He was presenting the Stanford Blockchain Conference. And at the time, Findora was a research project. There were several Stanford PhD students that were working on it. And, the kind of crux was that to build a blockchain with a public blockchain with privacy that could kind of help to introduce more of the traditional financial kind of world into the into blockchain. So I thought it was kind of interesting. The Benedict, for instance, was one of the inventors of bulletproofs, and also as kind of one of the founding team of Findora. I started taking a look at some of the research and was really kind of inspired by some of the work there. At some point, early this year, I saw that Findora was looking for, someone to run product, and just kind of took the opportunity. Now, I see that, Discreet Labs is I think at the time it was 15 people when I joined in March. We're well over 50 now, so almost 60 people.
Wow.
So it's been a tremendous year of growth for Discreet Labs. We have kind of rebuilt the research team, have some really impressive academics that are working on some cutting edge technology on particularly around zero knowledge proofs and multi-party computation, which we can kind of get into more later. But I think that Findora kind of represented an approach to privacy that was sensible and that I hadn't really seen before. Traditionally, privacy projects like Zcash or Monero, you have either everything's private or everything's public, transparent. And Findora allows a level of what they call selective disclosure that allows the user or developer to actually take control of their own privacy, which I think is kind of the way it should be. So Findora is very much like a third generation blockchain that's kind of using those like cutting edge tools like zero knowledge proofs and multi-party computation to enhance privacy in the blockchain sector.
Great. You kind of answered a few things in there, but we kind of hear of your traditional, your Bitcoins, your Ethereums, some of these other like layer ones and layer twos. Yeah, I mean, I guess, can you like break down, and you would think, and there's going to be, I guess, many more maybe coming around the corner, but kind of what differentiates, and you're touching on it a little bit on kind of like the privacy aspect. What, what's in the market today, right? If somebody's looking at Findora, they're like, there's so many blockchains. Findora is rather new, but the team, I think everybody iterates, right? You don't want to be the first one, you don't want to be the last one. And I think you guys are taking the like you mentioned, the tools that are available. Zero knowledge proofs have been around a long time, but I think they're, everybody's trying to figure out how to use them in one way or another, especially in the blockchain space. So my question is like, maybe you can compare and contrast a little bit with like, what's in the market and how you guys are different than some of the ones that we do know.
Yeah, sure.
It's competitive, right? It's competitive out there. So just Findora came out, and you guys have been a solid. I think I came across them too at the Stanford conference, probably when I met you. And you probably feel like you're late to the game or whatever, but not really. Like, everybody's still building and trying to make it better, I guess, for the end user. So yeah, what kind of differentiates Findora a little bit, and how do you compare to, I guess, what's been around to what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So, obviously everything started Bitcoin. I started Bitcoin as most people. And Bitcoin is, kind of the king crypto. But there's some interesting kind of lessons learned with Bitcoin, right? I think for instance, the transactions are radically transparent. So, anytime you leave a fingerprint, or like you KYC at Coinbase, right? Or you at some other exchange, and you do a transaction, that can be referenced back to you in some way, shape, or form, which is effectively like leaving a fingerprint, on the blockchain.
And I think a lot of people already think Bitcoin, the blockchain, is anonymous. You can like run money, but it's actually, you can do nefarious things, but like really, it's actually not a good choice to use a blockchain in general like that,
Right.
to hide,
Right.
or tax evasion. Like, not a good idea.
Yeah, it's actually it's a total fallacy that Bitcoin is anonymous. It's actually pseudo anonymous.
Yep.
And it's becoming more and more pseudo anonymous or less anonymous every year.
Yep.
Which is a problem, not just with Bitcoin, but any kind of public blockchain that doesn't have privacy, embedded in the layer one. So, a project like Zcash comes in and says, we're going to effectively fork Bitcoin and make it private. Right. And there was some breakthroughs in zero knowledge proofs to enhance the privacy there. And then another project, but the privacy in Zcash is optional, right? You can opt in to the private transactions. Another project that built on that was actually called Monero. Monero is private by default, so you have private. You can only do private transactions, and Monero actually uses bulletproofs, which was originated by the original research team at Findora. So, but the restrictions between Zcash and Monero is that Monero only supports simple transactions, right? You can only send Monero XMR kind of between people privately, right? Findora kind of took it to another level. They said, like, let's do the privacy enhancing features, but also add things like token creation or token issuance. So you can actually issue tokens on Findora, similar to like an ERC20 standard, token. And then also kind of take it up a notch and start to introduce, confidential smart contracts. So, these aren't live yet on Findora. We're, in the process of working on that. But you can imagine actually doing confidential transactions, within a smart contract environment. So, this is very important, because most financial contracts, just like most financial transactions in the world, are completely private, right? And they're more importantly, they're confidential. And the difference being, the confidentiality is important from a business perspective, right? You want to kind of make sure your competitive intelligence, your competitors don't know what's going on and everything, right? So Findora has been building out this library of zero knowledge proofs to help bring more privacy and confidentiality to these blockchains. And it's doing it in a way that's purely cryptographic. So we're not using anything like requiring special hardware. There's some projects out there that use something called secure enclaves or trusted execution environments, or TEEs, which requires special hardware and requires some trust, in the hardware. Findora is actually using pure crypto. So you can run it on any server, and you're trusting the cryptography and the math behind it, rather than the actual hardware. So that's a little bit how we differentiate. We don't use mixers. A lot of projects have used kind of mixers to do privacy transactions. Mixers are actually really dangerous for a number of reasons, but one, they attract money laundering and kind of nefarious activity, and two, governments are known to run mixers as like a honeypot. So not only are they not as private as you think, but there's usually someone on the other end that's going to probably de-anonymize your transactions. So we're not a big fan of mixers.
That's what I was about to ask, actually, is like, yeah, I don't think mixers are that effective in one way or another for what the points you just made. Is talking about mixers and talking about some of the past chains, the strategies and methods that they use. Is this just innovation? Like, are you guys just at the forefront of like what's next in terms of, we've already talked about a little bit of outdated or ineffective, maybe the use cases for the previous chains you just mentioned work for that, particular time, whatever that is. You guys are obviously advancing it out. Are you leading the way in general, where like zero knowledge proofs are going to be a solution, for the next wave of generation of blockchains and stuff?
Yeah, totally.
Because you're kind of already explaining it, right? Like the transformation of the technology already getting better, tweaking it, and now we're moving up, and you guys are at the forefront of leveraging, zero knowledge proofs and bulletproofs.
Right. Yeah, we're really kind of standing on the shoulders of giants. I mean, like you said before, zero knowledge proofs have been around for a long time. They're invented, a couple decades ago.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until recently that they became actually, efficient enough to use, particularly in like financial transactions, right? So the proof kind of verification and the proof generation times have kind of been compressed enough that you can actually send a transaction without having to wait around for days. So, everyone's kind of in the space is kind of contributing to this technology in unique ways, and building on it, in kind of building on each other's work. So, we already see kind of zero knowledge proofs being used to actually do scaling on particularly on layer 2 through like ZK rollups. Yep. So those are being used to kind of solve some of the scalability issues, particularly like on Ethereum. Findora is just really focused on using zero knowledge proofs for privacy, but we can also, implement, them for scalability as well. But our kind of base kind of use case and base kind of value propositions around privacy, because we're really passionate about that. I think we adhere to like the cypherpunk manifesto of building more privacy for a digital society. So that's kind of where we're at.
And in terms of zero knowledge proofs, what types of and you're already kind of talking about a little bit like the use cases that you guys are seeing around privacy, right? If somebody's watching this video and they're trying to understand or let's kind of extract out some of these things and apply it to what somebody's trying to understand, like what's private about my transaction, how deep does it go in terms of privacy, and maybe we could touch a little bit on how these zero knowledge proofs are being applied on the privacy side for a use case.
For sure. Yeah. So there's kind of different ways you can approach the privacy kind of using zero knowledge proofs. You can do a more kind of general purpose zero knowledge proof, which kind of allows the developer to do like have more flexibility in how they support different these statements that become like super complex. Or you can do more single purpose zero knowledge proofs for like single kind of use case, or special use case kind of scenarios. So far, we've been focused on the single purpose. It's like applying like individual tools to do individual jobs or individual use cases, rather than just like doing a Swiss Army knife where you have kind of everything. So starting with something like bulletproofs. So bulletproofs are, a type of zero knowledge proof. They are more succinct. So the proof size is actually smaller, and that allows it to be verified faster. And then it's also, it requires no trusted setup. So Zcash was kind of infamous for its like a setup ceremony where there were 6 people kind of splitting keys and doing this all this crazy stuff, and then they had to discard the toxic waste of the setup. It gets it's pretty reasonable as long as you trust one person that they discarded the material, but it's still kind of not an ideal thing. So bulletproofs require no trusted setup, which was great. Just for being able to kind of maintain that zero trust model. Simple things like sending a transaction from me to you. It masks the balance, so you won't know how rich or poor I am. I won't know how rich or poor you are. The actual transaction amount is masked as well. So people don't know that I'm overpaying you or underpaying you if you're my employee. And then also, masking the actual address. So like, this is where it gets really complicated, something called triple masking, where you actually can't even tell like where the funds are going to or coming from. Now this gets a little dangerous, right? Where it's completely anonymous. You think like, there's lots of bad things that can have, or, bad people that can use them. But we think that, being able to do selective disclosure, where you can actually disclose the transaction as a key holder, I can disclose, who I sent it to. You can disclose, who you received it from, and doing that in a programmable way. So I should have the right to be able to disclose that if an exchange wants to know, if the regulator wants to know, if the IRS wants to know, whatever, it's up to me to be able to disclose that. So we're building out a variety of tools, things like, those types of proofs that allow that kind of selective disclosure to happen. And then, it gets like more complex, like things like, masking inputs and outputs of smart contracts. And actually the metadata that's like, embedded in a smart contract or in a transaction. It's really important that is encrypted, and the people can't necessarily just read that data for data privacy concerns. Most public blockchains you can, there's a way to do that. So having the ability to mask it, I think, is really important. But then also having the ability to disclose it is also equally important. So we walk that balance a little bit.
And what's your role in all this as a product manager? You're kind of discussing all of the features on the protocol itself, the features, providing insights. What's your role as a product manager? What are some of your priorities or focus? Discussing all of these cool things. What's your job?
Yeah, sure. I've always described the head of product, or like a product manager, is kind of like a conductor in an orchestra, right? we may know how to play certain instruments, but we're not actively playing them.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure that the whole orchestra sounds like they're in harmony, right?
Yeah.
So engineering is building things in the right direction, and is kind of building the right things that people will want to use. Marketing is marketing what engineering's built in a proper way. Like sales or business development, they're setting up strategic partnerships or whatever with the right entities, and saying the right things. And just making sure that all those teams are all in sync and in communication. It's a balancing act. It's like spinning plates. You want to constantly keep constant contact with everyone, and make sure that everyone's kind of moving in the same direction and playing to the same tune. Going back to the conductor
Yeah.
example.
Awesome. So well, before I get into my next question, you're talking a lot of we're talking about the protocol and Findora, right? The technology. It seems like you guys believe and feel that the value will be at the protocol level, as opposed to maybe like a layer two. And I was kind of reading on this, right? And I think you've talked about a little bit in terms of like fat protocols, and like how you guys value yourself, and like network effects, and allowing people to come in and grow it organically. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, totally. So, I think the FAT protocol thesis was published by Union Square Ventures, I think in 2016. And I remember reading it, and it just made so much sense to me. Basically, it's the value of the layer one network, particularly in blockchain, will grow faster than the sum of all the layer two kind of applications built on top of it. And the reason for that is, as the layer two applications are built, they actually increase the value of the layer one. And then as the layer one continues to add more features and functionality and scalability and everything, it actually increases the value of the layer two applications. So it's this cycle. But just like the internet actually evolved in a different way. The actual network, internetwork, the internet protocol doesn't have a value. Like there's no actual value for it, but the value of Facebook, Apple, Amazon, the fangs, right, are in the order of trillions, right? So so they've taken a lot and captured most of the value of the internet, and they're actually laying their own fiber optic cables, transatlantic, transpacific, whatever, and creating their own kind of version of the internet. So they've kind of siphoned a lot of the value out of the network. So that's why I'm excited about particularly blockchain, is because it's one of the first times where the network layer, can actually grow in value kind of faster than the other applications on top. And that's inherently good for, because it's a public good, right? Because these networks, especially Findora, public, they're open, they're permissionless. So that should be, good for, public consumption.
And what about scaling on Findora? Like, do you see that, there's some other protocols here that are having challenges and hurdles and trying to figure it out. And then there's other protocols that have, maybe a different approach, different method that suits that well, and kind of tackle some of the gas prices, and, et cetera, et cetera. How do you guys manage that? And is that a risk, or have you guys solved it, or not solved it, but how do you approach some of the scalability issues?
Yeah, so Findora uses Tendermint for consensus. So the Tendermint team, Jay Kwan and Ethan, and they've built a really robust consensus mechanism. And we ultimately opted to use that because we figured something off the shelf like that is battle hardened, and and has its like scalability kind of built into it, was a pretty good design choice. So we inherit a lot of the scalability of the Tendermint consensus, which is pretty fast. And so we're hoping that gets us at least to the first couple innings in the growth. And then if we ever do run into an issue, which I think every network will at some point, that's where we can tap into the library of zero knowledge proofs that we're building, and potentially pull out something for a ZK rollup to do, to implement for scalability at, it doesn't even necessarily have to be at the layer 2. It could actually be embedded in the layer 1. So you can imagine, actual ZK rollups being embedded directly into the protocol. These are things that I think are exciting to think about, but at high level, the devil's always in the details, though. So we never know what we're going to get into.
Yeah, exactly. Now it's kind of crazy. And I think everybody forecasts that. And time will tell. And yeah, you're right. There are some solutions available that you can integrate, implement. But the thing with you guys is, I think you understand the zero knowledge proof game, right? And kind of like how to use it, how to leverage it. That when you cross that bridge, I think you'll be better prepared or well positioned to either integrate some of these things or see what happens in the upcoming years that may evolve and be an option, right, to integrate. So we have a few minutes here. Last question really is community. So we heard of Findora through Stanford, but I don't see too much marketing stuff. But you guys have a solid team. You guys are delivering, building. You come from an organization where the community was rather robust, strong, and very supportive. So how does Findora grow the community, whether that's through users, whether that's through developers? How have you thought about that, since you guys are rather fairly new?
Yeah, sure. So we haven't really done much on marketing, and I think that some early kind of phases, in fact, the marketing, some of the marketing was kind of a little like more outsourced, and wasn't, there was just a community of people that were passionate about the project that wanted to help market it. So we have kind of focused more recently on like how we can actually do more marketing, and actually it's part of the product too. So
Yes.
we're focusing on building interoperability for cross-chain liquidity, and being able to connect to other networks at the layer 1, so we can inherit some of the the communities and kind of build into other communities, and help bring value to those networks. And so we hope that, and we're seeing kind of a trend in more liquidity bridges where instead of, being tribal and kind of fighting each other, you can actually extend a hand over and say, hey, let's help each other. So that's kind of the approach I think we're taking. We want to be very open when it comes to community. Communities thrive. We also just released staking, proof of stake on, open staking on with delegation on testnet. So the community of stakers is going to continue to grow. I think being in the proof of stake kind of network game is pretty exciting. It creates a lot of interesting incentives for community participants to get involved. So we think that the decentralized community of staking operators is going to continue to grow, and there's a ton of communities there. So it's really cool because like the first generation of blockchains, I think, were like super siloed.
Yeah.
And I'm not calling out any Bitcoin maxis, but they exist. And I think the rest of the networks are kind of combining, and actually working together and building bridges, which I think is pretty exciting. So we want to be right a part of that, be very open and willing to work with some of these other communities, and hopefully we can build something there.
Yeah, no, I was just at BTC Miami. Definitely a lot of maxis out there. Does that bring a lot of risk, or like how do you bridge? How do you choose where to bridge? To not what's what I'm looking for. You know, cause any like integrity issues, right? Like you guys have your own security consensus ways that you built the protocol for all that, for privacy. How do you choose like where to bridge, who to bridge? Is it the community? Is it the tech? Is it a lot of users? You listen to feedback, amongst your community, right? On like, oh, where's everybody at? How do you go about like, identifying the opportunity to bridge? We're building a bridge for two protocols, in fact. And it's just kind of interesting, in terms of how to identify where to build a bridge. Because obviously you would like to be connected to everybody, but like you can't, right? You got to make sure that they're compatible in terms of fundamentals, principles, and like what you guys are about compared to somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. So we kind of, I think we're taking an ecosystem approach to it. I mean, the ecosystem is kind of like the sum of everything, the developers, the liquidity, the tools, the platforms and everything. So we're definitely taking an ecosystem approach. And I think we're going from there and just expanding out, and it's going to be very community driven. There's governance decisions that will be made in the future by the community, and kind of the community will kind of take the project where it wants to go, which is could be scary, and you never know where it's going to end up. But I think inherently it's good, for kind of building more kind of value at that, like going back to that kind of that fat protocol. So the more interoperable the network is, I think the better chances there are that it'll be kind of more useful in the future.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Warren, we've kind of come up on our time here. Like it's been a great discussion. Good to see you. It's been a while. Hopefully we can collaborate as things open up back here in the Bay Area. Where can people learn more about Findora or Discreet Labs?
Sure. Just Findora.org is Findora.org is the primary place. I think the teams are kind of working on constantly updating the site, and that's a good place. Discreetlabs.io is also just a kind of a landing page for describing what we do. We're active on Discord and all the other channels that are out there, Telegram, you name it. So yeah, just check us out. Team's growing fast, and we're really excited to be building out programmable privacy.
Awesome, awesome. Well, man, it was good to hear from you. Good to see you. Thank you for taking time out of your day to come participate, as you always have in the past. We hope to have you definitely back on, if not yourself, somebody from your team, somebody from your organization. You guys are working on some cool things that I think, and you're growing, right? So I think there's going to be a lot of movement, and hopefully we can share those through Reimagine over the next few months. So without further ado, everybody, thank you for tuning in to Reimagine. You can catch Warren Paul Anderson, VP of Product at Discreet Labs, our past events on YouTube for free. You can catch him on YouTube in general, talking a lot of good stuff. Good person to know. And thank you for all watching.
Thanks, Adam.